One of my favorite stories of Spenard is our high school favorite hangout, being that one of our high school friends lived below Gwenny's. So we would often skip school to watch Jerry Springer and smoke pot and then head upstairs for pancakes. So it was really just the perfect combination of delinquency, which could only be found probably in Spenard, right? The best place for it. So that's my story.
And I arrived on April Fool's Day of 1995 on a one-way ticket with Mark Air. And I came up here with one duffel bag to be a flight instructor. All I wanted to do was fly airplanes.
But no, I like it. But this community, I know a lot of these people through the Poetry Slam, which years ago, actually it's more than 20 years now that we started the Anchorage Poetry Slam. And I had a lot to do with that, and I met a lot of people. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was hating my job, and I just needed to get away and to get, into something that was more, that fed me, and this community did. They fed me a lot, so, and they still do.
But I actually live now right around the corner, and I have since 1999. And I think the thing about Spenard that I really love, and this event has reminded me about this, is community. I mean, Spenard is just a very funky, eclectic community. And that's what I love. It's filled with a lot of different people who have really unique stories and unique talents and unique backgrounds, myself included. This is where I found my tribe of artists and poets and painters that still enrich my life today. So I would say, out of all the things that I've been thinking about as we've been doing this event, what it is about Spenard that I love and what keeps me here is that feeling of community, and that it's just a very funky, wonderful place.
And I had long blonde hair, and I said, "Hi, I was wondering about your apartments for rent for your advertisement." And she looks me up and down out of the. She had a cage. There was a cage window with bars across it, and she looks at me and she goes, "Oh, right. What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm a flight instructor." And she goes, "Uh-huh, that's a good one. Haven't heard that one before."
My particular Spenard story takes place in either, I think it might be 1944, it could be 43, 42, and Anchorage is going crazy because you've got thousands of GIs, soldiers, moving into the town, moving into the bases, and they don't have enough places for them to stay. So people are putting them up in their garages. If they've got a spare room, they're allowing tents to be set up along the roadside in people's backyards. And I mean, it's going nuts, and they can't build enough housing. So they're starting to spread to the south rather. In other words, they're now starting to take over Spenard, really take it over. The road has been there for a while. Spenard Road leads to the lake, where there's a nightclub, and the nightclub, I'm forgetting, it was called the Lakeshore Club.
So I used to work on movies, and I worked on The Frozen Ground, which I don't know if you know about it, but it's, it takes place in the early 80s. So I was a location scout, and part of the story takes place in strip clubs. So we had to find a strip club that looked like it belonged in 1983. So what we ended up finding was PJ's, which used to be right up the street. No longer exists. But a few years before we were ready to film in 2011, I guess the feds busted the owner or something. So they took possession of it, they boarded it up and just closed it. So like 4 years it was totally sealed up, like gas turned off, no electricity. So when we got in there, we wanted to see what it looked like. It was moldy, like you wouldn't believe.
So the story I was gonna tell was really, the first one that came to mind was that I was biking down the sidewalk, and there's a guy just peeing, and it's the middle of the afternoon. It was like a Wednesday, and he was just peeing, and I biked by him. I didn't know what to do, so I just said hello to him, and he said hi back, and I kept biking, and that was it. And it was this spring, actually. It was pretty recent.
And walking with my headphones on, just past the Harley Davidson shop, so on this side of the street, walking down the street, and I get to an intersection there just past Harley Davidson, and this guy is unsteady and walking towards me and starts like acting as if he knows me, and I was like, whoa, and I noticed he has blood all down his face, down through his mouth, all down the front of his white shirt.
But yeah, working on 100 Stone, we were able to work outside the majority of the summer, and people would walk by and they're like, why do you have people hanging from chains in front of a church? What are you doing? Why do you have a basement full of bodies?
I think Ethan must have been running for House and Hollis must have been running for Senate. And I don't know what year it was, but I had fairly young baby goats at the time. And while they were canvassing the neighborhood, apparently my goats got out.
It's family friendly, right? And it's Alaskana.
Now you can tell me the real.
Yeah, the real. But what I wanted to tell you about was when we were working out there, I saw the most fascinating thing again and again and again. Sometimes once a week, sometimes once a day. There would always be somebody who was angry. Screaming, shouting at themselves, at God, at whatever, and someone would always be trailing behind them, about 20 feet. And this person, and it was the same thing every time, but different groups of people each time. They'd rah, 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 and then they'd stop and they'd turn around and rah, 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 rah at the person behind them, and then they'd start walking again, and the person would stop when they would stop. And it was just like this really strange, it almost didn't matter what they were saying. It was the same exact aggression going toward this trailer, this person who would trail behind them each time. And the person seemed very injured and very hurt and very powerless. And then there was this fighting aggressor up front who would just be leading the way. And I could never understand why those people would follow that. I could never understand it. I'd watch and I'd watch. And it happened at least a dozen times. At least a dozen.